Hey guys, Jacob Moon here, and welcome to the Levite Summit. I'm a singer-songwriter and guitar player from Hamilton, Ontario, and I just want to share with you guys a few things that I know about songwriting. Today, I know that each one of you could probably host one of these and share some unique things that you've learned about songwriting over the years. But today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about writing songs and sometimes the pitfalls and the trials and tribulations of the songwriter. You know, we all know what it is to start with one of these, right? The blank page, the page that has nothing on it, that either sits there as a emblem of infinite possibility or mocks us with the fact that there's nothing on it, and there really maybe will never be anything on it unless we do something about that. If you've ever had that experience where you feel like you've written your last song and there's nothing more to say, there's nothing more, you're not going to have the inspiration again. It visited you once, but that was it. And now your songwriting days are done. These are the sorts of lies and misinformation that gets put in our heads sometimes when we're trying to be creative. But if we can put all of that aside for just a moment and say, what can we do with the blank page? Even just to get us started, what can we do that would make this song possible, right? And sometimes just by picking up an instrument, maybe you play the piano, maybe you play a wind instrument or a stringed instrument. I play the guitar, and so I happen to like writing on the guitar. But I realize that it has limitations as well. And so sometimes I'll write on the bass guitar, because the bass guitar has even more limitations in a good way. I can only play one note at a time usually. And so those single notes really open up the possibilities of melodies that can appear over top. For example, if I play just this note, you can either hear it as a major chord, or I can hear it as a minor thing, right? Right? It's just that one note leaves it open to us as the singer, as the melody writer, to think of what the melody quality ought to be, major or minor, and all of the modes that are attendant to those. So it's the bass is a good place to start too. Just wanted to mention that because I know Sheryl Crow is a big fan of writing on the bass. But if you got a blank page and you have nothing on it, sometimes it's a great thing to, instead of starting with words, although that's definitely a direction you could go, if you like me, are kind of inspired by chord progressions and rhythms and tones, then sometimes the melodies that you write from those will inspire the cadence and meter of the lyrics that you come up with. And sometimes it's okay to sing just dummy words that aren't the final words. But interestingly, sometimes actually might have a kernel of the final words in them. There might be some little turn of phrase that you naively sing into the air that ends up kind of sticking with you and is maybe the key to writing the rest of the song. It's pretty rare for all the dummy words to be ones that we would keep, but if we just sort of sing, again, into the air, I mean, if I'm just... I had a dream, stray so it seems. I had a dream. That just came out of me. I had never written that song before, right? I don't know I had a dream. Where did that come from? I don't know. The words kind of just spilled out before I could edit them. And it's really important that we don't edit them, right? That we don't judge them, right? Even you're allowed to judge what I just did. That's totally fine. But as a songwriter, if I was writing that song in the quiet of my room, it really is important that we don't choke the baby in the crib, as it were, right? We let the thing live a little bit so that we can kind of look at it, turn it around, and kind of see what it's all about. And so songs are like that. Songs are as fragile as that sometimes. And sometimes you pick up an instrument and it just is available to you. It's open to you. It calls to you. It inspires you. And even if you're just playing a basic D chord, you know, it still kind of just sounds cool. In this case, I was playing the D chord, but I was also playing a drop D on the lowest string. Another way that you can kind of trick yourself into writing a song is by going to a different tuning that you don't know that well. It's okay if you don't know how the chords move in the bass register. If you can kind of play them above, you know, you can kind of even just keep that drone going, that low D. Play little shapes of chords. You know, there's a D, there's a G, there's a C, there's a G. You know, just play these little shapes above. It's okay. Again, if you don't understand open tunings and how they work and how they sort of necessitate fingering changes for all the chords that you know and love, that's fine. Just see if that kind of inspires you. So take it in that direction. An altered tuning, a single note, you know, where you can kind of choose the quality of the melody. Those are two things that you can do right away to kind of dodge that paralysis of the blank page. I'll teach you just a few basic things that you can take with you today. You should know, first of all, that if you're in the major key, as I just was there, that there are 3 chords, right? They always say if you can know 3 chords and the truth, then you can play music. D, G, and A are the 1, the 4, and the 5. The D is what we call the tonic. It's the home chord. It's where we belong. It's where we start and it's where we return to in many songs. The G is kind of the home away from home. And its technical term is the subdominant. It's just below the dominant. It's on our way to getting there. Haven't got there yet, but this is a good place to hang out while we're doing that. To really get to a destination, to kind of force an epic struggle between the tonic, the D, and the dominant, which is, you guessed it, the A. We got to play that A, you know. In some cases, there's an A7 that really ramps up the tension. It's gonna have the effect of kind of wanting us to kind of return back to the D chord. Okay, so those are the 3 functions: tonic, D, subdominant, G, 4 or 4, and the 5 is the dominant. In this case, the A. And so the other chords, the minor chords and the diminished chords of the series of diatonic or chords that belong to the tonic, in this case the D, would be as follows. It would be D, E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, B minor, C sharp diminished. And so all those chords are available to you. And the D, the F sharp minor, and the B minor are all tonic functioning chords. So if you have a melody that sounds kind of tonic or kind of homey, like it kind of staying in that triad of D, F sharp, A, which is kind of the 3 notes that make up the D chord, then those other chords are available to you. Certainly the D and the B minor are very interchangeable. And that's why people talk about a relative minor, right? A minor that is in the family, as it were. So you could either play a song in D, or if you had written a song in D and it was major and it sounded happy, but you thought the words were kind of sad and you wanted to match that, you could take that same melody and sing it over B minor, and it would most likely work out just great, and it would sound interesting. So that's interesting, because they share a function, they are interchangeable in that sense. The F sharp minor is somewhat provisional as to whether it will work. It kind of has to have an F sharp or an A in the melody for that to work. The D doesn't work as well because it kind of wants that C sharp in that triad. But those are 3 chords that all kind of belong together as tonic functioners. The subdominant ones, there's only 2 of them. There's the 4 chord, which I mentioned was G, but its relative minor is 3 semitones lower. E minor, it's always with 3 semitones down from the major, right? And there it is, E minor. So E minor and G in the key of D both function in a subdominant way. They're kind of going nowhere. You just go from D to E minor, you're kind of not going anywhere. Just like if you're going from D to G, you're kind of not going anywhere. It's not until you go to the dominant, right? 5 chord, 5/7 chord, that you're kind of going somewhere. And then if you go to the C sharp, right? And you're kind of going to a diminished chord, that's also dominant functioning. So C sharp, diminished, in this case, yeah, sort of half diminished, 7th, going to the D chord. There's your sort of 7 chords that you can play in the key of D. You might say, well, is that it? Is that all I've ever got, is 7 chords to work with? Well, in the key of D, yes. However, if you don't mind borrowing, and certainly in 2020, we had to do a lot of borrowing just to stay alive. But harmonically speaking, if you borrow things from other key centers, like the other key centers that I just listed, the other chords that I just listed in that series, I borrowed from G, for example, right? I might come up with the chord C and its relative minor, A minor, right? So it's kind of cool to kind of introduce C or A minor in isn't that a song? I think there's a million songs going on. It's like In God's Country by U2 does that. D major, or whatever it is, maybe it's C, going to the 5 minor, right? And it sounds kind of cool, kind of exotic, a little different than just going to that, right? That business, right? Southern rock kind of style is like 1 to flat 7. In this case, C, which is borrowed from G, going to G, right? And so when you use those chords, you should know that they have a certain kind of resonance, they have a certain kind of genre significance depending on what instrument is playing them and how they're being played. And so they might be suggestive to you of a certain feeling, a certain musical universe that they're evoking. But certainly sometimes they can be the unexpected chord that makes the melody come alive. So this harmonic and melodic approach that I'm talking about is something that we can kind of have some fun with in Waymaker, right? So that's a melody, okay? So we've established that that's what it is. And if you can adequately play the melody on whatever instrument you know, or just sing it, then you can find those chords that, again, by searching the database of chords that I've mentioned today. So, you are here, it goes to the 6th note of the scale, right? And if it goes to the 6th note, you can either play the note that starts on the 6th, the chord that starts on the 6th note, which is, in this case, you are here, right? You can either play that, or you can play the chord that has the 6th as the 3rd of the chord, or kind of the quality note of the chord, the note that tells you if it's major or minor. In this case, that's the 4 chord, which is the chord that we used, right? So you can use the 4 chord, or the 6 chord, or the 2 chord, right? So you are here, right? And then moving in our midst. And that note there is F sharp, which you could either hear as the root of the F sharp minor chord, right? So you are here, moving in our midst, right? And then I worship you. That's That's again the second degree of the scale, which you can hear as the fifth degree of this chord, A, or you can hear it as the root of the minor chord, the 2 minor, or you can hear it as the third of the borrowed chord, the C chord. Right? So you are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. Right? And that's 4 new chords to go with the chords that we had, right? And are they better chords than the original? Maybe not. But maybe it made us think just a little bit about the theory of what those possibilities are for these chords, right? And again, so taking melody to interesting places, again, wordlessly, if you don't have words yet, over harmonic progressions that kind of excite you in some way. And sometimes it's worth just stopping everything and imagining the music as well. This is something that singer-songwriter Todd Rundgren does. He sort of spends a lot of time in his mind thinking about the music so that by the time he goes to do it, he can execute it very quickly because he's already sort of imagined it in his head. And so that sort of step of almost visualizing the musical information, the attitude of the song, the tempo of the song, where it's going. And if you've ever dreamt a song and woken up in the morning and remembered it and written it down, then that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's something that is happening quite without us testing those melodies and chord progressions on instruments and voices, but more wordlessly and noiselessly even, going over it in our minds, in our souls, in our spirits, and seeing if that incubation process will reveal something that we can execute later when we do get an instrument in our hands. All right, so the blank page doesn't have to stay blank forever. You can do something with it, and I trust that you will take everything that I've said today and find some way to apply some of it. And hopefully it'll make your music and your inspiration better. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and thanks for joining me today. Check me out at jacobmoon.com or youtube.com/jacobmoon. Thanks so much.